Gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. Your super chat is greatly appreciated. If you want to give a super chat during this live stream, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you so very, very much. Ladies and gentlemen, really quickly before you hear in a couple of seconds JD Vance, there is certainly an effort. There's certainly going to be indictments. I do believe that Hillary Clinton, is going to be one of the people indicted. This was going to take place 10 years ago, but there was a cover-up. James Comey wrote the Comey letter, which signified or was the zenith of the cover-up that couldn't be covered up. So what took place was top secret intelligence was found on secret private servers. Then you'll hear later in this live stream that classified data from Clinton's servers were being forwarded to Anthony Weiner. Okay, that's one footnote within this entire saga of setting up and framing Trump. Comey wrote the Comey letter because they found that they couldn't cover up the Clinton email debacle. And so there's going to be indictments. You can say, oh, that's never going to happen, but watch this. Check this out. It is going to take place, ladies and gentlemen. You have a completely different Department of Justice. And don't worry about the EP files, okay? EP was a liberal Democratic donor who gave to Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer. He gave to Democratic representatives. He gave 90% of his donations to Democrats. And he had Democratic presidents, and he had Democrats fly to different locations with him. That was an issue that Democrats, even Vox, talked about them covering up. So don't worry about that. The intelligence is almost certainly completely fabricated, altered, and destroyed when you're talking about what actually took place, a client list or whatever. But the indictments pertaining to Clinton and others that are on the horizon, that are basically already written, those are simple. If you conspire to create a new Cold War, it's not a difficult thing to prove. Check this out. Hit subscribe.
We're still waiting for accountability on the whole Russia collusion made-up story.
Yes.
Now that DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, has released all of those classified documents, we're actually seeing who was behind all of this. Do you want to see indictments?
I absolutely want to see indictments, Maria. Look, of course, you got to have the...
So you heard it. You heard it right there, but let's continue.
Law follow the facts here. You don't just indict people to indict people. You indict people because they broke the law. But if you look at what Tulsi and Kash Patel have revealed in the last couple of weeks, I don't know how anybody can look at that and say that there wasn't aggressive violations of the law. What they basically did is they defrauded the American people in order to take Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign talking points and turn them into intelligence by defrauding the American people, defrauding the intelligence agencies, lying about what the intel said. They would take something that supported a Hillary Clinton campaign talking point and they would overemphasize it and exaggerate it. They took anything that actually contradicted that narrative and they buried it deep. And through that, they actually laundered Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign talking points through the American intelligence services. That's a violation of the people's trust. That's a violation of what our intelligence services should be doing, and I absolutely think they broke the law, and you're going to see a lot of people get indicted for that. Here's the thing that should really bother the American people. What do you want our intelligence community to be doing? I want them to be catching bad guys. I want them to be making sure that terrorists aren't going to kill innocent American civilians. I don't want them laundering Hillary Clinton's campaign talking points into the American media and giving them this air of legitimacy. It is sick. And it's disgusting. It hurt the intelligence community, it hurt the American people, and it hurt the first Trump administration. We have got to have consequences for it, or we're just going to see the same play repeated again and after again.
How significant did it impact the president's first term? Because remember, a lot of people didn't want to work in the administration. He was always on defense, saying, I didn't collude.
Sure.
What kind of an impact was there to actual policy and the impact on the American people?
Look, it certainly had an impact, Maria. The president likes to say this, and I really think it hits the nail on the head, that as much as he got accomplished accomplished. And I think the first Trump administration was a major, major success for the American people. He was both governing, but also fighting to survive. Imagine if he was able to put 100% of his efforts and his attention on just doing the job of President of the United States.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rome wasn't built in a day. You can't simply expect 10 years, actually over 25 years. Well, actually, what Trump has done is unprecedented. Okay, maybe you can look back and say, well, Andrew Jackson in terms of American politics, but he took a wrecking ball to a very entrenched, established political system that both left and right were propping up. And so, nothing's ever going to happen. It's like, well, okay, you're not going to... President Trump is not a conservative podcaster, okay? That list that everybody wanted, yeah, Trump and Pam Bondi shouldn't have talked about, because the list either doesn't exist or is altered in some way, or could perhaps put a lot of innocent people, victims, also at risk. And so there's a whole can of worms pertaining to that. And I agree, President Trump's administration shouldn't even have brought it up. And if they did bring it up, they should have, whatever they have, released. But it didn't happen for a number of reasons. Primarily because Democrats in New York and elsewhere literally went to bat for EP. But when you're talking about indictments of Clinton or others, Comey, McCabe, Brennan, Clapper, all of these people, they set up and framed Trump. It's not difficult to prove. The intelligence community was leveled against Trump by people who utilized bureaucracy. 18 U.S. Code 371. I wrote about that in the Federalist. This is not difficult. They've been working on that even before President Trump was elected, almost certainly. And so these indictments are already written. So when you say, well, nothing's ever going to happen, the indictments for Russiagate, the hoax, that's almost certainly, like 99.9%, we'll just say 100% going to happen.
He had to fight back against the fake Russia collusion hoax pretty much his entire administration. That distracts resources, that distracts from the Department of Justice. That means the intelligence community is focused on that instead of on catching bad guys. It definitely had an impact. Thank God we have a president who is able to do good things for the American people despite it. But one of the reasons why I think the second Trump administration is going so well is because the administration, the people underneath them, the people behind them, the people working for them, they're not engaged in this fake garbage. We're just trying to carry out the mandate of the President of the United States. And I think we've done a very good job. We're very proud of the work that we're doing, but we're also loyal to the man who was elected by the American people.
And here we are on your 200th day, you and the president doing so much in this second term. Let's talk about the president's effort.
So let's go ahead right now. We went from James Clapper during President Obama's administration, okay, to other DNI chiefs, to Tulsi Gabbard. And so this is a huge sea change in American politics. Check out the newly declassified documents. And yes, the indictments, if you remember this phrase, they are imminent. If you remember that phrase, I love you.
To impact the outcome of the U.S. election. On December 5th of 2016, the FBI and ODNI gave the House Intelligence Committee its first post-election classified briefing, in which there was no mention of Putin aspiring to elect Trump by either agency. The Presidential Daily Brief, drafted on December 8th of 2016, stated that no Russian or criminal actors impacted vote counts. This document was pulled just hours before it was to be published due to quote-unquote new guidance. If it had been published, it would have been briefed to both President Obama and President-elect Donald Trump. On December 9th, 2016, a National Security Council meeting was called to gather President Obama's senior national security officials, which included CIA Director Brennan, then Obama DNI James Clapper, Susan Rice, and others. Secret meeting, DNI Clapper's assistant sent an email to the intelligence community with the subject line, POTUS tasking on Russia election meddling. tasking ODNI leaders to create a new assessment per the president's request. The House Intelligence Committee Oversight Report that we released today reveals that, quote, unlike routine intelligence community analysis, the intelligence community assessment was a high-profile product ordered by the president, President Obama. It directed senior intelligence community agency heads and created an intelligence community assessment limited to just 5 analysts using one principal drafter. This is not something that occurs in the normal path of producing an intelligence community assessment that reflects the views across the intelligence community. The production of this intelligence community assessment was subject to unusual directives directly from the president and senior political appointees, especially the former director of the CIA, John Brennan. The House Intelligence Committee Oversight Report also shows how later that same day, on December 9th, Brennan ordered the publication of quote-unquote substandard reporting on Russian activities, which had previously been withheld from publication of prior assessments because the information was judged, quote, to have not met long-standing publication standards. Some of the information later used in the Obama-ordered assessment over the objections of veteran CIA officers was, quote-unquote, unclear or from unknown sources. The Intelligence Committee's Oversight Report reveals that CIA Director Brennan overruled senior CIA officers who challenged the Obama-ordered intelligence assessment, stating, quote, we don't have direct information that Putin wanted to get Trump elected. Yet, the Obama-directed assessment was published on January 6, 2017, which explicitly stated, quote, we assess Putin and the Russian government aspired to help President-elect Trump's election chances, when possible, by discrediting Secretary Clinton and publicly contrasting her unfavorably to him.
The unmitigated, not only audacity, but the Democratic Party's stupidity when it came to trying to shield the public or shield the world from their own corruption. The DNC emails showed they cheated Bernie Sanders. Hillary Clinton's emails showed that she hid whatever it is she hid in those deleted emails and illegally transferred top secret intel onto servers. These are complete debacles. These are political disasters of biblical proportion. And what Democrats did is they said, well, other countries want you to know how corrupt and inept and dysfunctional we are, thus trying to deceive you. You would have to be an imbecile to believe any of this. And you had very smart people wanting to believe this. Because most Americans, let's say left or right, they're not really that interested in politics. They're somewhat interested. There are people who are very interested. Like my viewers, thank God, very lucky. I'm very fortunate. You're very, very interested in politics. Most people are not. So they just hear nonstop, Russia wanted Trump. And that line was repeated millions of times. But the electorate truly didn't believe it. It was just cover. It was just a way to make a rabid, passionate base of liberal Democrats who aren't really... They're passionate only in terms of tribalism. They're not really passionate about specific. There are obviously activists or people passionate about specific liberal or progressive ideals or policies. Most on the left are not. So they had to have some way after Clinton and then Biden and then Harris. I mean, look at the people, look at the nominees. Okay, they don't inspire enthusiasm or passion or energy. So what did Democrats...
Unverified nature and purposeful sidestepping of intelligence community procedures in its use. Now, President Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, and others, including their mouthpieces in the media, knowingly lied as they repeated the contrived narrative that was created in this January 2017 intelligence community assessment with high confidence as though it were fact. John Brennan, as CIA director, stated in a memo to his agency staff in December of 2016, saying, quote, there is strong consensus among us on the scope, nature, and intent of Russian interference in our presidential election. This was reported by NBC News, confirming that Brennan, along with James Clapper and James Comey, agreed with the CIA's assessment that Russia intervened to help Trump win the presidency. As Obama's director of national intelligence, James Clapper was tasked with overseeing the creation of this assessment in January of 2017 by President Obama, and he expressed confidence in its findings. In a 2018 interview with the Harvard Gazette, he talked about how he provided Trump with the same classified assessment that President Obama received, which included the high confidence judgment that Putin directly ordered the hacking and election interference. Clapper then went on to add, "I think they, the Russians, actually influenced the outcome."
So this was all a lie. Not one vote was altered, because we know you can look at just if there's ever like a Wayback Machine or evidence of what Democrats or liberals or progressives or what, well, not progressives, but liberals, Bernie Sanders supporters were completely disrespected every single day. Every email, every DNC email that was released online, that's all you have, that's all you have, you have nothing, oh, we can't wait till you fall in line. They were ruthless online. Liberal Democrats were running high on the most insane amounts of hubris and arrogance and confidence. To say they were overconfident would be like, they were so overconfident, it was unbelievable. There was not a second where they ever said, hey, is there another country trying to deceive Americans into thinking that, oh, we cheated Bernie Sanders and that Clinton had top secret intelligence on emails? We already knew all of this. This was public record knowledge. It wasn't other countries that made Democrats do what they did with servers and with Bernie Sanders. But the sleight of hand was, oh my God, we lost. How can we explain this? Because people were mortified. And so they just lied. And then they pontificated about lying. And the Washington Post, in the most petulant manner, with fit 40,000 Trump lies. You could have made the same, if they used the same standard to decipher what a lie is. You'd have 80,000 with Biden, well, whenever he spoke, and Democrats all throughout Trump's term when it came to Russia. They lied every single day. There was never even a shred of evidence, not even a shred of evidence to point to Trump being investigated or to justify Trump being investigated because Democrats' dirty laundry was aired. That's not a plot from another country. That's simply, okay, this is public record knowledge. It's called journalism. And because journalism took place, actual journalism for a second or for, about a year, they couldn't stand it. And then they said, okay, we're going to go into Hunger Games mode, Orwellian nightmare mode, and every single day will be about Trump Russia. So they lied through their teeth simply because they were mortified.
This is a brief summary of the details that you'll find within the House Majority Staff's report in their investigation into the Obama-directed January 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment that leads us to the very same conclusion that we announced in the release of our documents on Friday. The implications of this are far-reaching and have to do with the integrity of our democratic republic. It has to do with an outgoing president taking action to manufacture intelligence, to undermine and usurp the will of the American people in that election, and launch what would be a years-long coup against the incoming President of the United States, Donald Trump. Thank you.
Hey, if you haven't exercised
Grand jury investigation is now underway regarding the Trump-Russia hoax. The media enablers that peddled the lie for years, though, are circling the wagons.
This is extraordinarily stupid. It's extraordinarily stupid on so many counts. Barack Obama had nothing to do with this by anybody's account.
How could the president of the United States, if Trump ordered his intel agencies to go after a rival, they would say, Trump directly ordered it. Look at his tweets. And it's like, but you're it doesn't matter whether you have Twitter or you don't have Twitter or Truth Social or whatever. If something happens of this nature in a presidential administration, the president is involved. Even James Clapper stated the president was involved. Actually, James Clapper blamed President Obama, stating it was President Obama who ordered the investigations.
We're all for transparency on any potential corruption, right? But this is something that has been combed over for a decade now.
I think they're trying to create.
It's been combed over during the decade by Democrats who wanted to perpetuate a hoax.
The appearance of progress in this investigation without actually making any progress.
They all did their job, right? The 4 years, 5 years. Meanwhile, President Trump, he's awaiting answers.
I have nothing to do. Pam is doing a great job. I have nothing to do with it. I will tell you this. They deserve it. I was happy to hear it. I actually read it just like you did. I have nothing to do with it.
Here with reaction is Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence. Director Gabbard, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Laura.
There's a report tonight from the Federalist that the DOJ is actually asking you for more documents in its grand jury probe. Is that true? And what are they asking for now?
That is true, Laura, and I just want to point out how important this is, that Attorney General Pam Bondi, through the Department of Justice, is taking this necessary first step toward accountability, which is essential for the American people to begin to have any kind of trust in the integrity of our democratic republic. I met with the Department of Justice prosecutors today, and yes, they are committed to leaving no stone unturned as they conduct this grand jury investigation and find the truth. Obviously, we've already handed over the documents that we've declassified and released publicly over the last few weeks. They have more questions, and they're going to be really taking a deep dive into this again, looking everywhere to find the truth and conduct this very serious investigation.
You heard the media reaction, and a lot of these same people were just buying lock, stock, and barrel what was sold to them during the 2016 election. But they're essentially saying, this is all old news. This is such a stupid political move on their part.
So that's what happens. They've been so indoctrinated and inundated for a decade with lies that they just want to accept it and move on. They're the perpetrator. So Democrats or certain people who will be indicted perpetrated one of the most gigantic hoaxes of all time. This was one of, in the history of the world, one of the greatest hoaxes. To accuse an incoming president in 2015 of being an operative of Russia after the Berlin Wall fell 35 plus years earlier. And you have media. That's why nobody trusts media, and like trust in journalism and media is an all-time low. They have lied every single day for 10 years. Not only has there not been a shred of any evidence to ever support any investigation of Trump, the quote-unquote evidence was literally purchased by Clinton and the DNC in the Steele dossier and then funneled through a whole bunch of publications that were a part of the hoax. Okay, any journalist that tried to legitimize the Steele dossier was literally an intelligence operative. Oh, no, I should say not literally, but essentially an operative of the Democratic Party or intel agencies.
Into that, you say?
They are using the same old tactic that the deep state's propaganda arm in the media uses. Whenever they come across something that is true and that doesn't go along with whatever their narrative is that they're trying to shove down the throats of the American people, they first usually ignore it, as they did when I first released these documents a couple of weeks ago. They tried to ignore it when they realized that they weren't going to get away with this, that this story was going to continue breathing life life. We continued releasing new documents. Then they decided, oh, we'll take this approach of say, oh, this is nothing. There's nothing really to see here. This is bizarre. This is a conspiracy. These are the things that they do over and over and over again. And the next step they will take when they feel that they are not succeeding in getting rid of this truth that we have uncovered for the American people, then they
Super rad. I have to give you a special thank you and shout out. Greatly appreciated since 2015. Super rad. Thank you for watching for that long. And it's really greatly appreciated. And it's fine. The indictments are finally imminent. Took about a decade, but thank you, Super Rad, for watching from the very beginning. I greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
They will go down the route of we must destroy and smear and attack the credibility of those who are delivering the truth to the American people. They've done this to President Trump. They've done this to me. They've done this to so many different people, once again, who are trying to tell the American people the truth and expose these people, many of whom you just showed, for who they are as the propaganda arm of the deep state, which would have no power and no influence if they weren't able to feed their lies into a willing spokesperson through the propaganda media.
Now, Director, you said there was irrefutable evidence that Obama was the mastermind of this intelligence manipulation and the perpetuation of the Russia hoax. What is that irrefutable evidence for our viewers tonight?
Why is Amazon paying me $63,000?
Yeah, Laura, as you were playing those clips of these people like Morning Joe seemingly befuddled, saying that by no account is any of this true, I would challenge them to see if they've actually read the documents, every single page of the documents that we've released over the last couple of weeks. If not, go to odni.gov, G-O-V. It's all right there for anyone to see. And those who go in and read this will see how President Obama directed that a National Security Council meeting be called to talk about Russia, that the report that came out of that meeting was filled with tasks that were delivered by James Clapper's assistant to John Brennan and to other elements of the intelligence community. John Brennan was the head of the CIA at the time, all saying per the president's direction, per the president's order. And very specifically, they were tasked to
They're all going to testify under oath, either at trial or in Congress, yet again, probably at trial. And they have all the government has all the documents, memos, and all the digital information. So President Trump's administration has everything, or almost everything, that the previous administrations wanted to hide. They never imagined that Trump would return. That's a big thing here. And then I don't think President Obama will be indicted. Hillary Clinton, almost certainly. And President Obama will probably facilitate or help President Trump in that respect. The way the Democrats work is who started the birther myth? It wasn't Trump. It was Hillary Clinton's campaign. Okay, it was somebody within Clinton's campaign. And so that's the way Democrats operate. Everyone was saying, oh, they're going to flip and sing. Trump's administration is going to flip and sing. It's like, no. There's no flipping and singing with Trump because nobody committed any of the crimes that were accused of them. However, the crimes that former officials committed, setting up and framing Trump, these are legal statutes that they broke. Not difficult to prove. And they have all the information pointing to, okay, this was ordered. And why was it ordered? President Obama could simply, easily, without testifying, give that information to President Trump.
Create an intelligence assessment that detailed how Moscow tried to influence the election, not if, but how. And this was the beginning of this manufactured intelligence assessment where they knowingly wrote things in this assessment that were false, and they knew they were false. They knew that they were basing it on discredited intelligence or documents like the Steele dossier that was politically motivated and that they knew was false. And this was how they came up with the Russia hoax that was then weaponized and used to try to delegitimize the president, President Trump, and to try to ultimately enact this years-long coup throughout his entire 4 years of his first administration.
And they further say that there's like this idea of saying that Obama is guilty of treason, that there's almost no chance.
So President Obama is not guilty of treason. Treason is when you give secrets to an adversary. Okay, Aldrich Ames, Robert Hansen, these are former U.S. spies, worked for Central Intelligence and then the Federal Bureau of Investigation. There are others, a whole bunch of others. But in many cases, they actually walked to the Russian embassy and gave the KGB secret files. That is treason. What President Obama did was political in nature. Everyone around him that facilitated all of that, that implemented that strategy, fueled and, started because of the Clinton campaign and DNC. That's 18 U.S. Code 371, which is what they tried to level against Trump, which was hilarious. Years before, Biden was kicked out of office. So Trump complained about Biden winning and said, wait, how did he win? And then the Democrats, how dare you tarnish the sanctity of our elections? As they cheat Bernie Sanders, and then they cheated Biden after he won his primary. They don't even have functioning primaries. They kicked Biden out. I'm still getting over the fact, not just the whole Russiagate hoax, I'm still getting over the fact that they just kicked Biden to the curb, and they haven't even addressed why they did that. I mean, the actual answer was, well, he was one fry short of a Happy Meal, but they haven't even really admitted that.
That he's going to be charged or convicted of treason, so why even go there? And I'll pose that question to you.
The integrity of our democratic republic depends on the American people knowing the truth about what actually happened and seeking that accountability, bringing about that accountability. I don't know how else to characterize what happens when there is a sitting president of the United States, there is a director of the CIA, a director of national intelligence under President Obama, the head of the NSA, James Comey is the head of the FBI, all coming together, and this is documented in what we released, all coming together to create this lie with the intent of delegitimizing the duly elected president of the United States because the person they wanted to win actually lost. And the American people made their own choice in spite of everything that happened in that 2016 election, and they chose Donald Trump. This was not a one-off thing. This wasn't just, oh, well, they fudged the lines a little bit. They created a lie and propagated that lie in order to try to undermine the person that the American people chose to be our president and commander-in-chief.
To your point that you made earlier, that when they're losing on the facts, they demonize the messenger. And in this case, you're the messenger. And I think this is a big reason your opposition to the forever war syndrome, that's one reason. But then this was another reason they clearly did not want you in your position. And to that point, Mark Warner, of course, Democrat senator from Virginia, wrote on X today, Tulsi Gabbard is a threat to our national security and should be fired. He's taking his orders pretty well, don't you think, Director?
Again, national security is defined as what is best to keep the United States safe. It's not defined as safe and prosperous and American citizens, their lives safe from threats abroad. It's not defined as what's bad for the Democrats, which is what national security has been redefined as.
He has and continues to be a reliable soldier. And you're right there, Laura, to make that comparison, because these very same tactics they are using now are the same tactics that the warmongers of Washington have consistently used, whenever anyone challenges them to say, hey, this does not serve the best interests of the American people. It does not make us more safe, secure, and free. So why are you doing this? Exposing these people for who they are. And once again, who is the deep state? What does it consist of? We're seeing this revealed in real time here. And it's important for the American people to pay attention and realize, like, hey, with the mainstream propaganda media, we got to pay attention. We got to use our common sense and recognize we should accept nothing they say at face value.
And how important is it to root out any remaining problems in these agencies, Director? Because we need our people to believe in the FBI, to believe in the CIA, to or get rid of them altogether. I mean, I hate to say that, or just completely defund a lot of these intelligence agencies. If we can't trust them, if they're going to subvert democracy and subvert our presidency, why are we funding them?
Well, this is, and I'll go back to that Mark Warner tweet that you put out saying that I'm a threat to national security. Why? Because I'm actually exposing the truth. As Director of National Intelligence, I'm doing the work to go and root out those deep state bad actors within the intelligence community, because our country's national security depends on it. The rule of law requires it. The integrity of our democratic republic requires that, rooting out the truth, telling the truth to the American people, and bringing about that accountability. So yes, it is essential across the board, not only to root out the individual bad actors, but to enact the kind of institutional reform to make it so that these kinds of things cannot be allowed to happen again.
Director, thank you very much.
Hey, Sean.
And joining me now on the legal ramifications of a conspiracy to take down President Trump is Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. He is the author of the bestseller, Witch Hunt, the story of the greatest mass delusion in American political history. Also joining us is journalist Lee Smith, author of The Plot Against the President, the true story of how Congressman Devin Nunes uncovered the biggest political scandal in U.S. history. Both books, I should point out, were published more than 6 years ago. Back in 2019, these two were telling us the truth. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and thank you for your work. Greg, kicking things off with you, what is your reaction to what you just heard from John Ratcliffe?
By the way, if you watch this channel, 2016, 17, 18, 19, we all knew. Like the Steele dossier, we found out the dossier was purchased by Clinton, I think in 2017, 2018. The dossier itself, when BuzzFeed published it, was complete nonsense. There was no validity to it at all. None of it. We knew in 2017 that it was all nonsense, but Democrats needed, millions of Americans needed a scapegoat. They needed some kind of excuse as to how, like, their entire political ideology was crushed within one night. So they had to find some way to explain how wrong they were. And then, enter the whole Russia hoax.
Do you believe the DOJ will act, and will the statute of limitations apply to conspiracy or not?
I would say yes to all three. This does look like a broad criminal conspiracy, Maria, by unscrupulous officials, dishonest people. And I would look at conspiracy to defraud the government, deprivation of rights under color of law, but importantly, obstruction of justice and the cover-up. The elaborate cover-up has been going on for years, as Stephen Miller pointed out, which extends the statute of limitations in any conspiracy case against malign actors. That's because the clock begins ticking when deliberately concealed evidence is discovered, which is actually quite recently. So, for example, you were talking about the burn bags that were discovered, incriminating documents hidden at the FBI, as well as other records, hard drives squirreled away under lock and key by Comey, recently found. So attempting to conceal or destroy evidence relevant to investigations, that's obstruction, and the last overt act in a conspiracy starts the clock anew. So that's the value of bringing a conspiracy case that includes obstruction.
When do you expect the DOJ to act then, Greg?
Has to be before midterms. So before November of 2026. So within the next year. But I think within 3, 4, 5 months.
I think they still need to accumulate all of the relevant evidence, much of which is probably pretty incriminating. But I wouldn't be worrying about the clock right now. I'd be concerned about gathering all of the credible, reliable evidence to present to a grand jury.
Lee Smith, I remember when you were writing this book and you were working with Devin Nunes to do so. And Devin Nunes is the hero in all of this. We know that. He was on my show on this program multiple times throughout 2016, 17, 18, telling the truth. I want to thank you and Greg for your truth telling. There were a few of us, myself, you, Molly Hemingway. What about the media's role? You haven't heard a peep of this on any of the mainstream media, this huge story.
Well, I mean, it's hardly surprising, Maria, because the media was the crucial platform. None of this happened without the media. The issue was not that the Washington Post or the New York Times, that they blew the story or they were lazy. They were an important part of the story.
So Lee Smith is 100% correct, and he states it in a brilliant manner. You couldn't have this hoax without the media perpetuating the hoax. Okay, you couldn't have the hoax without the media perpetuating it.
Remember, especially the Times and especially the Post, this was a platform for leaks of classified information. They were part of a serial crime spree run by the Department of Justice and bad actors at the FBI, past and present at the time, 6 years ago. So it's not surprising that we see an article like the one that we saw this week by Charlie Savage and by Adam Goldman, which is running just insane nonsense, misreporting what this Durham Annex is actually about. I just want to make clear what this Durham Annex is about. It's about how the FBI hid information that came in from a trusted foreign partner. Durham never said anything like it was forged information by the Russians or anything like that. No, the fact is that the FBI, when this information came in, they hid it. And in fact, it's also a crucial piece of information that the CIA never believed that this intelligence was Russian disinformation. They believed it. So they knew what they had. They knew what it was pointing to. And instead of stopping it, instead of stopping this insane Clinton program to undermine Trump, what did they do? The FBI plotted to get a surveillance warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. And that's what led to the biggest political scandal in U.S. history.
And you had FBI officials actually testifying, in a sense, as defense witnesses for many of the indicted within the Durham probe. The Durham probe, when people say, well, it didn't, people left and right, oh, it didn't lead to indictments. Like, well, it led to one, an FBI lawyer that literally fabricated evidence to continue a FISA warrant. But the issue is that the Durham probe collected all the evidence needed. And I said this back in the day with 2020, 2019, 2021. I said the evidence collected in the Durham probe is going to be used for future prosecutions. I'll be back this evening. We'll do 2 live streams a day, everybody. 2 live streams, at least 2 videos. We'll do 2 live streams every day and then upload. So be here tonight. I will be back. God bless you all. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching.